Before we dive into tonight's tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want more creepy stories that will keep you up at night. I wasn't supposed to take this job. I knew that the moment I stepped into the hotel, my stomach knotting up as the heavy doors swung shut behind me. The air inside was stale, thick with the kind of quiet that felt intentional, like the building was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the first move. The lobby wasn't grand or inviting. It had the outdated charm of a place that should have been condemned years ago, but somehow kept running. The carpet, once deep red, had faded into something dull and lifeless. The walls were covered in dark wood paneling, giving everything a suffocating, closed-in feel. A single chandelier flickered overhead, casting warped shadows along the ceiling. I adjusted the strap of my bag on my shoulder, trying to shake the feeling that I was already making a mistake. But I couldn't turn back. A year ago, my sister worked here as the night auditor, and a year ago, she vanished without a trace. No goodbyes. No last phone call. Just an empty apartment and a single note left behind in her journal. The rules are the only way out. The police had nothing, no signs of struggle, no forced entry. It was as if she had simply stepped into the dark and never returned. No one at the hotel could or would give me a straight answer. Just murmured excuses about how she must have left on her own, about how the security footage had mysteriously been erased that night. A glitch, they said. Bad timing. Bullshit. I knew my sister. She wouldn't have just walked away. So when the job listing for the night auditor position reopened a few weeks ago, I didn't hesitate. If no one else was going to find out what happened to her, I would. I'd follow her footsteps, work her shift, and I'd find the truth. The office behind the front desk was cramped, barely bigger than a supply closet. A small desk sat against the back wall, stacked with old paperwork and an ancient computer that hummed with the effort of staying alive. The only source of light was a flickering desk lamp, casting long shadows across the room. I dropped my bag onto the chair and ran a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. The shift hadn't even started, but exhaustion was already pressing in at the edges of my skull. Then I saw it. A notebook. It was shoved into the back of the desk drawer, half buried beneath a mess of old receipts and paper clips. The leather cover was cracked, the edges frayed. When I picked it up, something flaked off onto my fingers. Dried blood. My breath hitched. I flipped it open. The pages were filled with frantic handwriting, some words smudged, others crossed out so violently the paper had nearly torn. My stomach twisted as I scanned the entries, trying to make sense of them. Most of it was nonsense, scribbled warnings. Half-finished thoughts. Some pages had been ripped out entirely, but the last page was clear. If you're reading this, you're already part of it. Follow the rules or you'll join us. I swallowed hard. My hands felt clammy against the worn leather. Beneath the warning, another line had been hastily scribbled. You won't remember writing this. I stared at the words, my pulse hammering against my ribs. I didn't write this, did I? I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. This was a mistake. Someone was messing with me. That was the only explanation. But then I turned the page, and I found the list. The rules: Rule 1, never answer the phone after 2 a.m., even if it's ringing non-stop. Rule 2, if the lights flicker, stay perfectly still until they stabilize. Rule 3, if you see your reflection blink, leave the room immediately without looking back. Rule 4, do not enter room 217 under any circumstances. Rule 5, if a guest asks for a key to a room that doesn't exist, give them the key to room 237 and lock yourself in the supply closet for 10 minutes. Rule 6, at 3:33 a.m., the elevator will open on its own. Do not enter it, no matter who or what is inside. At the very bottom of the page, barely legible, was one final warning. If you break a rule, you'll understand why they exist. My fingers trembled as I shut the notebook. The air in the office suddenly felt too thick, pressing against my chest like a weighted blanket. I could hear the faint hum of the lobby beyond the door, the occasional creak of the old building settling. It wasn't too late to leave. I could walk out right now, get in my car, and pretend I never found this. But then I thought about my sister, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere. I grabbed my bag, pulled out a pen, and underlined the first rule, 2 a.m. The phone rings. I'd be ready. The ringing cut through the silence like a blade, sharp, unrelenting. I glanced at the clock on the computer screen. 2:15 a.m. The rule said not to answer. Never answer the phone after 2 a.m., even if it's ringing nonstop. But it wasn't stopping. I clenched my jaw, fingers twitching at my side. The rational part of me screamed to ignore it, to let it ring until whoever or whatever was on the other end gave up. But the longer I sat there, the louder it seemed to get. It wasn't just noise anymore, digging under my skin, pressing against my skull. It felt personal. I took a slow breath and reached for the receiver. My hands were clammy against the plastic. I hesitated just for a second before pressing it to my ear. I didn't say anything. Neither did the caller. At first, there was only silence. Then, breathing. Slow. Deliberate. Not the kind of breathing someone makes when they're unaware of the phone call. It was intentional. A presence. Someone was there. The hair on my arm stood up. Then, a whisper. "You shouldn't have done that." The line went dead. A cold dread curled in my gut. I swallowed hard and set the receiver back down with a soft click. Then, the lights flickered. I stopped breathing. Rule 2. If the lights flicker, stay perfectly still until they stabilize. I didn't move, not even a twitch. The fluorescent bulbs above me buzzed violently, casting long, distorted shadows along the walls. The desk lamp sputtered, its glow shrinking in and out like it was gasping for air. In the dark corners of the office, the shadows stretched, shifting unnaturally, as if something inside them had woken up. I kept my breathing shallow, my hands gripping the edge of the desk so tightly my knuckles ached. The flickering lasted only a few seconds. Then, stillness. The lights steadied. The hum of the computer returned. The shadows in the corners shrank back, retreating like they'd never moved in the first place. My lungs burned from the breath I'd been holding. I let it out slowly, forcing myself to release the tension coiled in my shoulders. My hands were shaking. I rubbed them against my jeans, trying to ground myself. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it, the window. I turned my head, heartbeat hammering in my ears. My reflection stared back at me. But something was wrong. My breath caught in my throat as my reflection blinked. I didn't. I sucked in a sharp breath and pushed back from the desk. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, but I didn't care. I stood quickly, heart pounding, watching as my reflection, not me, tilted its head just slightly, like it was studying me. I backed away, pulse thundering in my ears. Then my gaze flicked to the glass of the computer screen. It blinked there too, and in the small mirror hanging on the wall beside the filing cabinet, and in the glass of the framed photo on the desk, every single reflective surface in the room, they were all moving on their own, watching me. The rules. I tore my gaze away, pulse hammering. Rule 3. If you see your reflection blink, leave the room immediately without looking back. I turned for the door. I didn't look at the window, didn't glance at the screen. I didn't see what they were doing as I shoved the office door open and stepped out into the dimly lit hallway. But I could feel it, a presence, a pull, like something was still staring, waiting. I slammed the door shut behind me, and I didn't go back inside. I stood in the hallway, my pulse still hammering from what I'd just seen. I took a slow breath, then another. The hotel was silent, the kind of silence that wasn't comforting, it was waiting. I wasn't going back into that office, not with the mirrors, not with whatever had been staring at me from the other side. So I did what I always did when I felt overwhelmed. I went back to work. I made my way down the dimly lit corridor toward the lobby. The soft glow of the chandelier cast long, uneven shadows over the reception desk. The space was empty, just like it had been all night. A quiet, eerie stillness settled over everything, like the hotel itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it. A leather-bound journal sitting on the counter. My brow furrowed. I hadn't noticed it before. I was sure the desk had been empty when my shift started. I hesitated for only a second before stepping forward. The leather was worn, the edges slightly frayed. It looked old, but not dusty, like someone had been using it regularly. A guest must have left it behind. That was the logical explanation. I flipped it open, expecting random notes or a travel diary. Instead, I saw my own handwriting. My chest tightened. I blinked, scanning the words, the slant of the letters, the small loops on my Ys. It was mine. No doubt about it, but I had never written this. I turned a page, then another. My breath grew shallow as I read through the entries. They weren't journal ramblings. They were records. Entries detailing things I hadn't done, conversations I hadn't had yet. The man at the desk asked for a key to room 999. I gave him the key to room 237 and locked myself in the supply closet like the rules said. That hadn't happened. I heard the scratching outside the door, then my own voice whispering, "You're next." That definitely hadn't happened. I flipped forward, skimming the words, my fingers gripping the edges of the paper so tightly they ached. Page after page, all written by me, all detailing things I had no memory of. I swallowed hard and turned to the last entry. The ink was darker here, like I had pressed down harder, like I had been frantic. I broke Rule 6. I shouldn't have entered the elevator. A chill swept over me, the kind that sinks into your bones and doesn't leave. I swallowed hard. The words on the page blurred slightly, my own shaky breathing filling the space around me. Then, a sound. Not the elevator, a shuffle. Somewhere just beyond the lobby. I turned my head sharply, every muscle in my body going rigid. The hallway leading to the guest rooms was empty, but I could have sworn I heard something move. I stood there for a long moment, gripping the journal, waiting. Nothing. Just the hum of the overhead lights, the distant creak of the old building settling. Slowly, I closed the journal and set it back on the desk. I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want to hold on to something that knew more about my night than I did. I just needed to get through this shift and stay the hell away from the elevator. Then at exactly 3 a.m., the bell above the front door chimed. I stiffened. I hadn't heard anyone approach. No footsteps, no car pulling up outside. But there he was. A man stood in front of the desk. His presence sent an immediate wrongness through me. It wasn't anything obvious, not at first. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, hands tucked into his pockets. His posture was relaxed, like he'd just come in from the cold. But then I met his eyes. Hollow, deep, empty pits. My stomach twisted. My brain fought against what I was seeing, trying to rationalize it, trying to find some human explanation. Maybe it was the shadows. Maybe the dim light was playing tricks. Then he spoke. "I need a key." His voice was off, like it was coming from somewhere else, like someone had recorded the words and played them back through an old speaker. I swallowed hard, forced my hands to stay steady. "Of course," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. "What room?" He didn't blink, didn't shift, just said, "Room 999. My breath caught. I turned to the computer screen, praying that maybe somehow I had misheard him. I typed the number. No results. The room didn't exist. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, mind racing. Rule 5. If a guest asks for a key to a room that doesn't exist, give them the key to room 237 and lock yourself in the supply closet for 10 minutes. I reached under the counter, gripping the cold metal of the spare keys. My hand shook as I pulled out the one labeled 237. I slid it across the counter. The man didn't react at first. He just stood there, fingers still curled inside his pockets. Then, slowly, he reached forward. The moment his fingers brushed the key, a sound. Low, scratching, coming from the supply closet behind me. The hair on the back of my neck rose. The man turned away without another word, walking toward the hallway. The shadows seemed to stretch around him as he disappeared from sight. I didn't wait. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk, shoved the chair back, and bolted to the closet. The scratching grew louder. I fumbled the door open, slipped inside, and locked it. Darkness swallowed me whole. The only sound was my own breathing, the tight, uneven rhythm of it. I pressed my back against the door, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Then, a voice. Not just any voice, my voice, whispering from the other side of the door. "You're next." I don't move. I don't breathe. For a long moment, I just sit there, staring at the frozen screen. The lobby camera is showing me. Not me sitting at the desk, watching the footage. No, the other me. She stands in the middle of the empty lobby, facing the camera directly. Stiff posture, dark eyes locked onto the lens, unblinking. I swallow hard. My fingers hover over the keyboard, but I don't know what I'm planning to do. Rewind it? Switch feeds? I glance toward the lobby. It's empty. Completely still. But on the monitor, my reflection tilts its head, not a natural movement, too sharp, too sudden, like something mimicking human behavior, but not quite getting it right. I feel my pulse in my throat. Then she smiles, A slow, deliberate curl of the lips, and raises her hand. She waves. A tight, mechanical gesture, like a marionette being forced through the motion. I lurch forward and shut off the monitor. The screen goes black. My reflection vanishes. But the lobby is still silent. I'm afraid to look. Afraid that if I do, she'll still be standing there. I don't know how long I sit there, my hands gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles ache. I don't want to check the notebook again. I already know what it'll say. But I reach for it anyway, my fingers brushing over the worn leather cover. It's colder than before, like it's been sitting outside in the snow. I flip it open. The rules are still there, each one written in shaky, frantic handwriting. My handwriting. The pages blur at the edges, the ink bleeding like fresh wounds. I blink hard, trying to focus, and that's when I see it. A sentence at the bottom of the page, one I swear wasn't there before. "You wrote this, Ellie. You're already trapped." The words blurred, twisting on the page. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The rules weren't protecting me. They were containing me. The Overlook Hotel wasn't haunted. It was a purgatory, a cycle, and I had always been part of it. After that, the ding of the elevator echoed through the empty lobby. I turned toward it, my whole body locking up. The doors slide open. My breath catches in my throat. My sister is inside. Tears streak her face. Her eyes are wide, desperate. "Ellie, help me." My pulse roars in my ears. Every instinct screams, "Don't do it." Rule 6. The elevator isn't safe, but it's her. A year of guilt, of searching, of dead ends. How can I just stand here? I step forward, into the elevator. The moment I cross the threshold, the doors slam shut, and the floor drops out beneath me. I slam into the wall as the elevator plummets. The lights flicker, throwing wild, twisting shadows across the tiny space. The numbers on the panel scramble. 12, 47, 404, 666. I gasp, slamming my hands against the buttons, trying to stop it. Nothing works. The air turns thick, suffocating, pressing against my chest. And then, I see it. A mirror. A large old mirror bolt to the back wall of the elevator. My stomach drops, because my sister isn't in the reflection, just me. The realization is like ice in my veins. I turn my head slowly, pulse hammering. "No," I whisper. "She's right beside me. I can see her. But in the mirror, it's just me." And then my reflection smiles. Not me. It, the thing in the mirror, and it moves. It lifts a hand, pressing it flat against the glass. Then, it reaches out. I scream. I shove myself backward, hitting the elevator doors. My sister, if that's even her, just stands there, blank-faced. Panic claws at my throat. My eyes dart to the emergency fire extinguisher bolted to the wall. I lunge for it. I swing. Crash! Glass explodes in every direction. A jagged shard slices deep into my palm. Hot blood spills onto the floor. The elevator shakes violently. Something screeches. A wail. A voice that isn't human. The numbers on the panel glitch, flickering in and out of existence. The space behind the shattered mirror is empty. A yawning black void. I drop to my knees, my breath ragged. Blood drips from my hand, and then an idea. I grab one of the broken shards and press it into my palm, letting the blood pool. With shaking hands, I write on the elevator wall, "Rule 7, the elevator is the only way out." The second I finish the last letter, the elevator lurches. The doors explode open, blinding light floods in and I'm thrown forward. I crash onto the lobby floor, gasping. The scent of morning dew fills my lungs. I blink against the sudden sunlight, my whole body trembling. The nightmare is over, or so I think. My hands are still shaking as I grip the steering wheel. The Overlook Hotel shrinks in the rearview mirror, disappearing behind the trees, swallowed by the early morning fog. I keep driving, faster. The cuts on my palm throb with every heartbeat. Dried blood stains my fingers, smeared across the wheel. Proof that it all happened, that I made it out. But the further I get, the more wrong it feels. Something isn't right. The road stretches endlessly ahead, a winding strip of asphalt through the forest. No signs, no turns, just trees, dense and unmoving like they're watching. My breath comes shallow. I need to focus, just get as far away as possible. I steal a glance at the rearview mirror, and my stomach drops. My reflection blinks. I didn't. It watches me. A fraction of a second behind, slightly off. A delay, like bad reception. Then, it smiles. I slam on the brakes. The tires screech. The car skids to a stop, gravel spitting against the undercarriage. My pulse pounds. Slowly, so slowly, I look up again. The mirror is empty. No reflection. A breath shudders out of me. My fingers tighten on the wheel, knuckles aching. Then, a whisper, right behind me. You never left. A shadow moves in the mirror. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more creepy stories. Stay safe, and see you in the next nightmare.